Hello, it's me, Joe Brennan, here to say Happy New Year. Woo! I've got this, but I won't use it. I know it seems a bit late for New Year's festivities, but the point I want to make is that it's 2021 and we made it. And you know who else made it to 2021? The 13th Doctor. Did you like that segue? Really, natural and not at all forced. But yeah, Jodie Whittaker has now sat on the throne of Doctor Who for 3 years and is currently working on her third series, much to the dismay of people who were convinced she would be fired and replaced within minutes. But she wasn't. She's still the Doctor.
But, if recent rumours are to be believed, this could all change very soon. The current word on the proverbial grapevine is that she's on the way out. This news came as a huge shock, although it probably shouldn't have. People talk about her like she's still the new one, but if she regenerates at the end of Series 13, she will have had 3 series, which has become the standard.
My point is that the time has come to start speculating on who will replace her. I know this conversation really begins as soon as a Doctor is announced, but rumours of a departure is going to reignite the interest. There's been talk of the role going back to a man, and I really hope that's not the case, at least for this one, because I think it would send quite an alarming message. There are a lot of people that would see it as the woke BBC deciding that this whole experiment was a failure and going back to normal. But I guess we'll have to wait and see.
I've seen all sorts of names suggested, from the usual suspects of Hayley Atwell and Chris Marshall to the more out there suggestions like the beloved national treasure that is Miriam Margolyes and the human equivalent of a pile of shit that is Lawrence Fox. But while all these suggestions are flying about on pretty much every platform on the internet, there's one idea that I've just not been able to get out of my head.
Look, I know you've seen her in the title and in the thumbnail, so you know who I'm talking about, but could you pretend you don't know, just for a bit, so I can build up to it and feel like a proper storyteller? Okay. I firmly and passionately believe that the 14th Doctor should be, drumroll please, Jo Martin. Thanks.
For me to properly explain why I feel so strongly about this, I've got to give a bit of context. It may seem like I go off on a tangent for a bit, but please bear with me. Okay, here goes. I do not like the 13th Doctor. This fact is something that I'm not thrilled about, because discussion of the show has become so partisan that it has brought out this real us versus them mentality in everyone. One that technically puts me on the same team as a number of professional dickheads who I won't name because they don't deserve attention. But yeah, it's true, she's just not for me. I really wanted to like her, in part so I could distance myself from that toxic part of the fandom, and also because I just like liking things. I was incredibly excited when it was announced, and I was pretty much in denial for a while after Series 11 started. To me, Jodie just didn't have that intangible spark that feels doctory to me. And I told myself for a whole series that it wasn't something that an incarnation just instantly had, and that I'd feel it very soon, but I just didn't. And I kind of wondered whether I was just an awful misogynist. Was this indescribable spark I was looking for just, in fact, masculinity? I didn't know. But then, 5 episodes into 13's second series, I saw the spark and was reassured that I did not, in fact, hate women. Unfortunately, it was not Jodie Whittaker who had it. 507 years ago, on the 26th of January 2020, the whole planet tuned in to watch Fugitive of the Judoon, unaware that history was about to be made. So much has happened with the Timeless Children reveal and stuff that's come out since that I think it's important to remember what actually happened in the story and what we specifically know about this incarnation. I hate feeling like I'm just summarising a plot, but it's important that we're all on the same page. So the episode starts with this new character, Ruth, looking at a watch in a kind of pained manner. This detail is so obviously a reference to Professor Yana in hindsight, but was completely overlooked by everyone the first time round. We get a pretty normal cold open, introducing us to some minor characters before the main plot arrives and the mystery begins. Ruth has a pretty normal conversation with her husband, and then begins her pretty normal daily routine. She is instantly endearing, so likeable and warm and bright as she greets everyone she meets in Gloucester and advertises her tour of the city. Then the plot kicks in. The Judoon are looking for a fugitive, and Ruth's husband Lee is acting very suspicious. He clearly knows more than he says. All the signs point to him being the fugitive they're looking for. Then, bada bing, bada boom, the baddies find him, and it turns out he's not the fugitive, but he's actually guarding the fugitive, and it's Ruth. He's the Martha in Ruth's equivalent of human nature, which, side note, is quite cool to see from a completely different perspective. The Doctor and Ruth are escaping the Judoon when they become surrounded. Then Ruth's instincts take over, and suddenly this tour guide from Gloucester is able to beat up a bunch of alien rhinos, and she feels the urge to return to her childhood home, which is a lighthouse that I've seen some people say looks like Gallifrey, but to me just looks like a lighthouse. I guess it depends how much you want to read into it. Like this mirror at the start that could deliberately look like a roundel or could just be a lovely IKEA mirror. Jodie runs to the garden to dig up the dead bodies of Ruth's parents. Ruth breaks the glass that has kept her real memories, suits up into a cool costume, and steps out to speak to the 13th Doctor, who's found the TARDIS buried in the garden. And the truth comes out.
Let me take it from the top. Hello, I'm the Doctor. I'm a traveler in space and time.
The two doctors spend the rest of the episode just kind of vibing. They can't really figure out who's the earlier incarnation, although the fugitive doctor is working for the Time Lords, which 13 takes as confirmation that she's from the past. But the episode ends with them going their separate ways with no real clarification on what's going on.
Obviously, this is quite a bombshell to drop halfway through a series, and a lot of reactions to the episode were a bit cautious, because it was set up to a payoff that hadn't happened yet. But one aspect that was pretty universally praised was Jo Martin herself.
Pretty much everyone I saw, myself included, was really excited by the casting and the performance she'd given. As is the case with everything that happens in Doctor Who, fan theories were abundant. Some thought the fugitive Doctor was pre-Hartnell, some thought she was between Troughton and Pertwee, but the most popular theory seemed to be that she was from a parallel universe, since neither incarnation remembered being the other. This theory gained so much attention that Big Boss Chris Chibnall actually had to put it to rest. Presumably he was worried that such speculation would lead to him being robbed of the praise he was getting for the groundbreaking casting. Literally a day after the episode aired, he did an interview with The Mirror where he said, "The important thing is to say, she is definitely the Doctor. There's not a sort of parallel universe going on. There's no tricks. Jo Martin is the Doctor. That's why we gave her the little credit at the end, which all new Doctors have the first time you see them. John Hurt got that credit." Honestly, I don't think I've ever heard Chris Chibnall speak. And I guess what he said turned out to be technically true, but I think in the ways that count beyond technicalities, it feels a bit like self-congratulatory bullshit. But at the time, we just had to wait until the finale when all would be revealed. Then, on the 1st of March, the finale came, and all was revealed. Everyone knows the Timeless Child twist, but if you've somehow managed to forget it, it basically revealed that the Doctor is a being from another universe who ended up on Gallifrey. The people tortured her until they were able to harness her regeneration abilities. Once they did that, they were able to build their empire and become Time Lords, with the Doctor doing mysterious, secretive doctory jobs for a weird group called the Division. It's not a twist that I'm particularly fond of. I've already made a video on this channel explaining my problems with it, and talking about how it represents a wider issue the show has, but it doesn't really matter here. What does matter is the fugitive Doctor, and we do see her in this episode, as a figment of the Doctor's imagination, or a projection by the Matrix. She doesn't do a huge amount, she just gives 13 a little pep talk and then vanishes, and that was it. The future of this incarnation is really unclear now. We may never see her again. It's unlikely, but it's possible. When he was asked whether he'd bring her back, Chibnall said, "I don't know," is the honest answer. It hasn't happened yet. But obviously he's in charge of keeping the secrets and wouldn't be likely to just spoil his plans for the future in an interview. As things currently stand, I think the show is in a really weird place in regard to this incarnation.
Even completely detached from my thoughts on the Timeless Child, I feel like the current status of the fugitive Doctor is stupid and disappointing, and I'd like to dive into why. I usually say that at the start of a video, but we're already so far in. I shall waste no more time getting to my point.
There are two main points I want to make. The first is the one that will no doubt cause angry commenters to label me as some kind of leftist social justice warrior, and, they can fuck off, and it's obviously that this casting is a real milestone. Jo Martin is the first black woman to play the Doctor, the first person of colour to play the Doctor full stop, if you don't include Peter Davison, which, you probably shouldn't. It's a big deal, and you might say that in this day and age, it really shouldn't be. You'd be absolutely right, but unfortunately we're still at the point where something like this is huge, and I think it's an important factor to consider. There's been demand for a non-white incarnation since as long ago as 1966.
My original idea was to black up and wear a big turban and brass earrings and a big grey beard and do it like the Arabian Nights. I thought it was a wonderful idea.
Every day I thank whatever powers control the universe for the fact we did not get this. But there have obviously been more genuine and less awful calls for it since then, from huge numbers of fans and a number of actors. David Harewood, Colin Baker, Samuel Anderson, even Helen Mirren said that it would be a good idea. Lenny Henry went as far as to say, "Why have we never had a black Doctor Who? They would rather have a dog do Doctor Who than a black person. There's no black people in Doctor Who." And he has got a point. With that many white faces in a row, it sends a pretty clear message. Although, according to Stephen Moffat, they did try. In 2016, he said, "The part has been offered to a black actor, but for various reasons, it didn't work out." I actually do know how Stephen Moffat sounds, but I just can't impersonate him.
So now finally, after 6 decades, this barrier has been broken, and it's quite rightly getting a lot of people very excited. As you can see, I'm not the best person to talk about what this means to people of colour, because I could easily be mistaken for a ghost in whiteface. But I know that representation is really cool and really important.
There's rightly been so much talk about how monumental it is, so it seems a shame to put a downer on it in any way, but it needs to be said. It seems kind of pathetic that they gave the world a black, female incarnation of the Doctor and she was just a supporting character. Chibnall can grandstand all he wants, but this is not a proper incarnation. She's a hidden figure from the 13th Doctor's past who only really exists to impact her story. Even within the Series 12 finale, Jodie's Doctor realizes that her past doesn't change anything. She likely won't have any episodes of her own or defining moments beyond the shock of her introduction. She's in this kind of limbo, the worst of both worlds, official enough to break the record and become the first, but not official enough for it to really mean anything.
You could easily say that Chris Chibnall wants all the credit of being the first showrunner to introduce a person of colour as the Doctor, but none of the responsibility that goes with it. You know what? I'm not going to hide behind hypotheticals. I think Chris Chibnall wants all the credit and none of the responsibility.
There are a number of people who have dedicated their whole lives to talking about how this era has gone woke, and I don't have the time or patience to dedicate my life to arguing with them. But one thing we actually seem to agree on is that The Timeless Children is kind of laughable when it comes to wokeness. Not because it's actually being progressive, but because it's pretending to be. It feels so transparent that they've made an effort to make all the previous incarnations people of colour just so they don't have to bother with any real representation. It feels almost patronising, reassuring fans that although literally every incarnation we've known so far was Caucasian, there are actually dozens of secret faces who weren't white. What did these faces do? They lay there and got tortured by an abusive mother. Then when it came down to having proper fun adventures, they just became 13 white men in a row. This important milestone has essentially been wasted on a minor side character. I'm not the first person to point this out by any means. A number of fans have spoken about their disappointment that such a historic and exciting portrayal of the Doctor will be a footnote in the history of the role. Some have even been told to just be grateful that it happened at all, which is obviously absolutely insane and an example of how positivity can sometimes become toxic. It's also worth noting that the revelation and her appearance in the finale make the character fall into this common trope that both the show and the world should have moved past by now. I won't say its name, but it's essentially when a black character appears in a plot solely to help a white character, before disappearing. In the case of Ruth, she literally vanishes after inspiring Jodie with a little speech. Like I said, I look like someone has spread mayonnaise on white bread, so my point of view isn't the most educated, passionate, or interesting.
My second point, however, is one that I feel 100% qualified to talk passionately about, and it's this. Jo Martin is a bloody good Doctor. From here on out, my points will pretty much just be personal preference, but my god, do I think she's something special.
This was apparent from the moment Ruth's instincts took over and she confronted the Jadoon. And as soon as we got the reveal that she is in fact the Doctor, I saw that indescribable spark that I'd been after for years. Apparently it is entirely possible for an incarnation to just instantly have it, which led me to the conclusion that the 13th Doctor might just not be for me. But that doesn't matter. I don't like the idea of bigging Jo Martin up just by putting Jodie down, but since 13 is present for all of the Fugitive Doctor's moments, comparisons are somewhat inevitable. And it's fair to say that the command Jo Martin has over the screen is incredible. There isn't a single moment the Fugitive Doctor is on screen and doesn't totally eclipse the 13th. In fairness, the way she kept me glued to the screen could be partially thanks to my desperation to learn as much as possible about this new incarnation, but I honestly think that the biggest reason is just the astonishing charisma of Jo Martin in the role. There's a power and conviction to her line delivery that just dominates every interaction, to the extent that when she's having a bit of an argument with 13, it just feels a bit like an unfair fight. And the thing is, the writing isn't even that great. Her dialogue isn't particularly witty or interesting, and I think it could have led to a really nothing character. The Fugitive Doctor could have easily been forgotten beyond the shock of the twist. But Jo Martin took what was in the script and elevated it to such an extent that her impact on people was huge. It's possible that some people do think she was a nothing character, but even they can't deny that she's clearly made an impression on other people. This even applies to her short scene in the finale. Obviously, we've already spoken about why it's problematic, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't feel like she once again stole the show. It's not a great look for Jodie being upstaged in her own finale, but it's more of a testament to Jo Martin than it is a reflection of her. This video isn't a veiled excuse to hate on 13, I'm just really excited about the potential of this incarnation, and we haven't been given a huge number of scenes to base this excitement on. When it comes down to it, it's just a feeling. There are just so many aspects to this incarnation that have been well thought out. The costume, the TARDIS, the attitude, it all makes me feel like she's a real Doctor, with things going on that we don't know about. It may sound bizarre, but I think the tinted glasses really help. It's the kind of detail that develops naturally over the course of a Doctor's era, but easily could have been overlooked when trying to make a snapshot. It's a massive contrast to John Hurt's War Doctor, an incarnation I could never really imagine existing outside of Day of the Doctor. It just doesn't feel to me like he's been around having adventures that we never saw. Everything we see of him seems like it's being made up on the spot. Obviously it was, but it shouldn't have felt that way. Whereas in my opinion, everything we see of the Fugitive Doctor just feels authentically doctory. She returns to the classic Doctor trope of calling the TARDIS old girl, and pulls it off so naturally. She just feels right. I think her massive gun throws people off. It was weird that our first look at this incarnation included a big gun at her side. The image was so ingrained in my brain before I rewatched that I couldn't remember if she was some kind of hardened soldier version. But the current Doctor calls her bluff when it comes to firing it, and we find out that she isn't so different.
Who wants some?
The Doctor never uses weapons.
I know. Shut up. We're leaving now.
You know, I just think she's neat. Actually, neat isn't enough. She's not a quaint, amusing little incarnation. She's a powerful and charismatic presence who captures so much that I'm looking for in a Doctor, while also feeling like something completely new. I really believe that she has the potential to become one of, if not the best incarnation in the show's history, and deserves a chance to have a go. So even removed from any politics, and I hate to call it politics because it's not really political, but you know what I mean. It's a shame to waste this lightning in a bottle casting. And then taking into consideration that it's also tossing aside such a huge milestone for the show, as well as little things like the costume and the TARDIS. The pairing of this actor and this character is something that warrants far more screen time going forward than just a couple of minor appearances here and there. So they should make her the next Doctor.
So now that we've all collectively reached the objectively correct opinion that she should be 14, I'm sure you're asking me, how? And my answer is, I don't know. I'm not a writer. What are you asking me for?
Well, I may as well try and work it out. It's kind of complicated, but I think if they wanted to, they could make it work, and I really hope they want to. They could reveal that the fugitive Doctor had actually never been a pre-Hartnell Doctor, and it was all a cunning ruse to trick 13 for one reason or another. In her brief appearance in The Timeless Children, she's asked by the Doctor whether she was one of the unknown incarnations all those years ago, and she says she doesn't have those answers. In fairness, she was either imaginary or a Matrix hologram in that scene, but it's still not direct confirmation that she comes before William Hartnell. This is obviously a bit of a reach, but clearly retcons don't bother the current Doctor Who administration too much. But it's not the perfect solution. If she came directly after 13, why would she lie and say she didn't remember being her? We have seen a Doctor not telling another Doctor that he's a Doctor before in The Next Doctor, so there is a kind of precedent, but the circumstances were rather different. What I'm saying is, it wouldn't be impossible to write that issue away in a throwaway line. I guess the messiest thing about bringing her into the Doctor's future would be her relationship with the Division, the subset of Time Lords who used to employ her. And yeah, this is tricky. I guess you could say that in Fugitive of the Judoon they were hunting a future Doctor, one who has regained some of her lost memories. In that situation it would make sense to lie to the 13th Doctor to keep her from finding out about the Timeless Children too soon. Honestly, I don't care how they justify it, I just would like them to try. Because I personally wouldn't mind if they just brushed over the whole thing, ignoring Gat and the Division and Lee. Doctor Who's canon is already a mess, and I don't understand people who care about inconsistencies at this point.
I mean, because Doctor Who's continuity, and up until this point, has been so impeccable and consistent, to make some kind of change or mistake, it would be... the whole edifice would come crumbling down. How could you say such a thing?
The contradiction of minor details should not come in the way of a major storytelling opportunity. Beyond the fundamental ideas of the show, I think the writers should be completely free to contradict as much of the complex lore as they want.
Have you ever been limited by who you were before?
But that's a topic for a whole other video. The thing is, there are enough people in the world and on the internet who do care about that kind of stuff, and disregarding that aspect of the character's story would make a lot of people very angry, even if we got a fantastic Doctor out of it.
So I guess there is another option. I personally don't love it, although I'd accept it if it was what was needed to get this Doctor back on telly. There's been some talk in the show over the last 10 years about the idea of choosing or revisiting faces. The 12th Doctor said that his face was chosen to look like Caecilius to remind himself of the importance of saving just one life. We also had the Curator, a potential future incarnation of the Doctor, with an appearance based on the 4th. He said that in time, the Doctor may find himself revisiting some old faces. So you could easily get away with having Jodie decide to change back to looking like Jo Martin, giving that face a proper go that she can remember. That would please canon nerds, or at least it wouldn't really annoy them, although I'd just prefer a hard retcon, as I think everything else is pretty unnecessary. And it would be nice to keep that TARDIS and costume.
However they go about it, I wholeheartedly believe that Jo Martin should be the next incarnation of the Doctor. I think they'd honestly be stupid not to. It's the right decision for so many important social reasons, but even if you want to keep politics out of the equation entirely, she's got so many characteristics that would make her a great Doctor.
No one has jurisdiction in interstellar space. So no laws and no crime. Isn't that right, Doctor?
The fugitive Doctor's strength, power, determination, humour, and command of the screen is palpable, even in her limited number of scenes. And she's also got the much less palpable magic spark that convinces me that she is the Doctor.
The Doctor? Doctor Who?
It would be one of the biggest mistakes in the show's history if we never got to see her go up against a Dalek, or say goodbye to a companion, or just be the Doctor in an episode on her own. Without wanting to sound entitled, Chris Chibnall needs to do exactly what I say, or he's completely failed as a showrunner.
Thank you everyone for watching, I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please leave a like as always, and let me know whether you think Jo Martin would be a good 14. If you're new, please subscribe, I'm hoping this will be a really great year for the channel. I really appreciate your patience with this upload, I took a much needed break. Like I said last time, I won't promise when the next video will be, but there will be one. Love you lots, see you next time.